Podcasting 101. All right, we're going to show you how easy it is to record your own podcast in the library DSL podcast studio. This is on the second floor of the library, of Evans Library, right here on the campus of Florida Institute of Technology. And I'm your host, Jared Campbell. So let's find out what exactly are we going to learn today. So you're going to know what a podcast is. That's a really quick one. and where you can, where to find them. You're going to know how to plan your podcast. You're going to know about the equipment that's contained in the Evans Library Podcast Studio right here in the DSL, and how to use it to make recordings. Going to know how to reserve the Evans Library Podcast Studio by emailing my counterpart, Martin, over there. Martin, you should wave.
I can wave. Hello.
Oh, you're muted, but I think you're not muted.
No, I'm not muted. I'm coming through.
Because we're coming through this. We're actually using the equipment that we normally would use for the podcasting. Anyways.
Podcasting through the microphone.
That's right. So you're going to know how to convert your recordings from WAV to MP3 format, because this bad boy will put out a WAV file. So you need to make sure it's a MP3 format. Going to show you how to use redcircle.com. Amazing free thing that will host your podcast and make it so that you can distribute to things like Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, a whole bunch of different plans, Stitcher, a number of things. And then you'll know about the student group that's called Panther Podcasts that you can join and be amazing. All right, so what is a podcast? Of course, a podcast is really anything that looks like a conversation, right? Anything that looks like a conversation can be a podcast. That means board games. That means interviews. This means talking about projects. This means maybe talking about your math. Can you imagine that? How nerdy. I love that though, because I found this thing. It's kind of an interesting thing that happens, Martin. I don't know if you're aware of this, but what I find is interesting is when I can talk about the subject very conversationally, then I understand it better. And on top of that, as long as I'm humble enough to handle when I make mistakes and I can have my friends correct me, if I can do that, then that means I understand the subject. But, of course, sometimes I just want to play around, right? We just recently came up with an interesting podcast here in the Evans Library. I'll talk about that in just a second. But basically, if it looks like a conversation, it could be a podcast. Now, some people will look at this and say, but I don't like the sound of my voice. And I know that's probably every single one of you out there. The one thing that will happen, the one thing that's true is that when you put these magical headphones on and you speak into these magical microphones, what happens is that you actually don't mind it anymore. It's only later when you hear the playback that you have to do when you're editing so for such a long period of time that you eventually forget that you don't like your voice anymore, and you get down to business. You talk about the stuff that you're here to talk about, and you move forward like that. It's actually quite a joy to get over that. So
I think you become a better speaker as well. When you get used to hearing yourself, you learn to speak a little bit slower, a little bit more precise.
I think that's pretty true, Martin. I noticed that, I've noticed this phenomenon happening when I go into a microphone, a little bit more cognizant of what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Anybody else who knows me will say, "Oh, Jared, he just blah, 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 blah."
We're not known for talking that much, being you, Jared.
Yeah, right.
We're very reserved.
So here are a couple of podcasts that I particularly like. Darknet Diaries, which is a really excellent one. If you're interested in cybersecurity stuff, and not these nerdy, it's not just like how to do it. It's these adventurous stories about people who are, doing this pen testing, and people who have hacked banks, and they get, bushels of money that come out of the ATM automatically. People who are doing like crazy, like cybersecurity crimes, and the people who fight against that. This Darknet Diaries is all about that. Really excellent. Jack Rhysider is an amazing podcast host, and it's super good. I guarantee you'll like it. Reply All is an excellent podcast for other sorts of reasons. They just talk about a whole bunch of different stuff, but they do a lot of really excellent research. on things that are interesting. Now, the last one there, the Sentinels of Evans Bibliotheca, is a role-playing game that we're doing at the library here, actually, and we just started this. Part of my way of making sure that Red Circle was a good host for these podcasts was me using us recording this. We recorded this adventure, this role-playing adventure, where the people who were playing were heroes, and we were fighting against misinformation using the Marvel Sentinel universe. It's a pretty fun role-playing game. It's actually hysterical. By the way, if you search for that on like an Apple podcast, you'll find Apple Podcasts or Spotify podcasts. If you search for that, you can go ahead and listen to our first episode, and it was really, really a lot of fun to do. Highly recommend that. Role-playing games and podcasts kind of go hand in hand. So that brings us to the glorious Evans Library Podcast Studio. It's in the Digital Scholarship Lab. It has these great pictures. This is the room that we're in right now. And you can see I just took 3 pictures. The one in the middle looks a little funky, but just you can tell that it's set up for social distancing. We've got mic covers over the microphone. So not only do you have to wear a mask, but the microphone also has to wear a mask, just because we want to make sure that you're kept safe. Now we use those the alcohol wipes, the disinfectant wipes, to clean everything before and after anybody uses the podcast studio. We kind of limit our podcast recordings at night to 1, because that we don't have time to clean the studio. So if you want to come during the evening, if you want to come in the evening, it's kind of first come, first serve. You get the first crack at getting the studio. And then each time we will wipe everything down. And it's not just the students who do it. We make sure we have Martin over there. Wave your hand again, Martin. Martin will make sure that it's super clean and safe. The picture all the way to the right is actually the mixing board that you'll use. It looks really complicated, but honestly, it's not. You only have to remember a couple of things, and I'll show you about those in just a second. All right. So here, the first thing you're going to want to know is, how do you reserve the Evans Library Podcast Studio? The first thing you want to do is you want to email Martin Gallagher. That's the guy I keep asking to wave over there. I'm not sure if you can see that because I have it spotlighted on me, but he's over there and I can see it, so that's fine. So you want to email Martin Gallagher. His email address is on the screen right now to request the studio. And then on the day that you're scheduled to visit, you're going to stop at the iDesk, which is the desk on the first floor of the library, and you're going to want to check out a micro SD card. Okay. Now, you have to wear a mask while you're anywhere inside the library. Anywhere in the library, you have to wear a mask, and that includes the podcast studio. Now you're going to say, but Jared, that's crazy. It sounds like I'm wearing a mask. Yeah, it will. And you'll be fine. It sounds okay. It's really great. It's not really that bad anyways. You get excited when you have the headphones on and the microphones, so it's kind of cool.
And if you turn the microphone up just a tiny little bit, it takes away the muffling a little bit from it, so you get a cleaner sound. So normally you just lose a little bit of volume. My particular masks have got an option for speaking anyway, but generally you'll get a little muffly, but you can adjust for that with a little bit of volume. I'll push through that.
Martin is very fancy. He actually made the mask that I'm wearing and the microphone covers and his mask too. So he knows what he's talking about when it comes to masks. So when you're in the library, wear it. Okay, so how do you set up the Rode Podcaster? That is this device here. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight this here. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to walk you through it first. First, the first thing you want to do is you want to take the micro SD card that you've checked out from the iDesk, and you want to put it on the back side of the Rodecaster Pro. You want to just put it in there. Now, that is spring-loaded, so you're going to want to make sure you push it in there and you feel a click. That's the first thing you do. The second thing you do is you put on your headphones. Notice I haven't turned the machine on yet. Now, the reason I put the headphones on before I power anything on is I want to make sure, be aware that I need to turn all of the headphone knobs down so I don't hurt my ears. Hearing is important. This third thing is, this is before the thing is even on, I'm going to turn all of those knobs right there, all those headphone knobs, all the way to the left so you can't hear anything. That way it'll keep anything from blasting in my ears. Then I'm going to power the Podcaster. And that's just a little red button on the back. You just push it and then it will light up. And then I will turn the volume up on the headphone about a half turn, maybe a little bit less. I don't like mine to be that loud, surprisingly, because I've listened to a lot of loud music over the period of time. And I'm surprised that I don't want it louder, but I don't want it that loud. So I turn it down just a little bit. Half turn is a good fail-safe thing.
There is a little thing just to be aware of when you do that. If your volume is too low on your headphones, you may not have your microphone up loud enough. So we've got to make sure our levels are high enough. And I know you're going to talk about that.
Yep, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in just a second here. So, as a matter of fact, we'll do that now. So once it's on and you have your headphones set right, you're going to adjust the fader. Those little silver things that you see that are different levels on the screen, those are the faders. Now, what that does is that makes it so that that brings up your microphone level. Okay, so if you can't hear yourself, even though you have your headphones set up, the headphone knob set about halfway, you want to make sure that you bring this fader up so that you can hear yourself. Now, here's a little bit of detail about how high do you want to have that up, okay? You're going to fine tune your microphone level until that you'll see a little bit of a brighter line in the center of the screen of the Rodecaster Pro screen. You want to make sure that when you're speaking, that's around where your microphone level reaches. So if it doesn't reach that level, it's okay if it goes a little bit past it or a little bit underneath it, but you want it to basically find that spot on average. So you can adjust that fader until you can see that your level is at that line right there. Now, I will tell you that people tend to talk a little bit louder when they get excited about things. So keep that in mind that you may need to adjust this later. Okay, so it's okay. There are faders. Don't be afraid to touch them. Okay, this is just basically how you make sure that you're going to get a really good recording. That's the thing. If it's right around that line right there, that's what they call like 0 dB level, and you're getting a perfect signal from your microphone. That's where you want it to be. It keeps it from sounding like you just recorded the speaker at the drive-thru at Taco Bell or something.
The other thing that we've noticed with the Rodecaster is it's got a limiter software setting built into it, which means if you don't talk loud enough, the microphone will mute to some degree. So we found over time that if the volume level is correct and you're close enough to the microphone, it won't give you that little clipping as though you're muting a little bit.
That's a pro tip. Master of DSL speaks. That's super good. So anyways, but what he says is that there's some technology that's built into the machine that if you're not talking loud enough, it won't pick you up. It does that so it keeps out extraneous noises.
Yep.
So it's called a filter. It's just a type of filter. So make sure you speak up. All right. Now, you can also connect a phone via the auxiliary cable, which is just having a 1/8 inch jack that you will see on the back of the Rodecaster. There is a little thing that looks like a phone, but honestly, you could use any device that puts out a 1/8 inch signal. If you can get your audio out and plugged into that 1/8 inch jack, then you can use that, and you can use the fader like it shows there with the finger on it. You can use that fader to make sure it goes up to the right level, because it's the same type of microphone level thing. You have to adjust that fader. Now, one thing that's pretty cool about that is this means that you can have people call into your podcast show. So if somebody can't physically be in the podcast with you, or maybe you want to talk to somebody who lives outside of Melbourne or something, you can have that happen. It's just calling in. You can have your own call-in show. How cool is that, Martin?
Very cool.
Martin did it one time. We did it. We also have another podcast that we called Shiny Things. And he was out camping and he called into our Shiny Things podcast, and it was really fun. So
You can also use that auxiliary for any sound output. So for instance,
Yep.
we have an iPad connected to it with lots of sound effects on that you can use it for. And if that is the case, if you're using the sound effects on the auxiliary, you can use the Bluetooth to bring your phone in.
That's right. Matter of fact, thank you. You are the master of segues as well, because you can also connect your phone via Bluetooth. It's really simple to do. All you have to do is you'll see that there's this blue button that has the Bluetooth signal that also has a fader. You're going to push it for 3 seconds, and then you're going to open up your phone and go to the settings on it to where you can get a Bluetooth connection, and you're going to connect to the Rodecaster. Then you use the fader to bring in your friend or maybe even some music, or you could potentially even use any type of audio signal that comes out of your phone. So that means that you can bring in all kinds of sound effects and all kinds of things. So that's kind of cool without using any wire at all. All right. And now you're ready to record. That's all that's necessary, and it's super easy in 12,000 easy steps.
Sorry, can I just step back once?
Absolutely.
One quick step. There is one other thing on there it's the first fader just before the auxiliary, which is the bringing in a computer from the USB.
Oh, correct.
Now, the beauty of this one is actually, as we're doing right now, if you want to do a Zoom meeting with 4 people, you can actually use the podcast microphones to send the volume through the USB to the Zoom meeting, is what we're doing right now, and bring the audio back in again. So it controls a really high quality audio for the Zoom meeting as well.
That's true. How could I miss that? You can plug in, what he said, you can plug in a USB cable into the back of the podcast or the Rodecaster mixer, and you can, so now the sky's the limit in what you can do with getting an audio signal in here.
There's some really advanced features not in this particular presentation that do multiple audio to GarageBand and all that kind of stuff, but not something we're going to talk about today.
Yes. So now one thing to keep in mind is that, if you are going to use your computer in Zoom and you're going to have a bunch of people coming in and calling and things like that, you may get a little bit of digital echo or something like this. So you have to have a level of patience to be able to kind of troubleshoot some of that stuff. It's not too hard. It's pretty easy to do. And one of the best ways to figure out what that is like is to come in and actually do a podcast. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do it live. All right. We're going to show you sort of live. So I am going to stop sharing. I think. Let's see here. There we are. I'm going to stop sharing. And I am going to spotlight this video, this one right here. Place the spotlight. So hopefully you guys can see this thing. It's a little bit awkward because we are using a cell phone and it's a little bit jittery, it seems like, but I guess that's the nature of things. Again, these are the faders, what I'm pointing at here, these little silver buttons. It's a little bit jittery, but you get the idea. Of course, back here is the area where you're going to put the SD card in. Don't worry. All you have to do is just look at it and it's labeled and you will see it. It's very simple. Okay. These right here are your headphone adjustments. These knobs here. These are your headphone adjustments. So if you turn it all the way down, like I'm doing now, I can't hear what is going on. So you want to make sure that everything is low when you first start to protect your hearing. So then you just bring it up and go as loud as you like here.
And just to remember that the order of the 1, 2, 3, 4 is from your right. Mm-hmm. You are number 1, and then you go 2, 3, 4 as you go around the table. And that's the same with the faders and the headphones.
Yeah, you will see that there are numbers here that are 1, and then we have the 2, and then 3, and then the 4. So that is also labeled on the microphones that we use in the podcast studio here. It's on a label right here. It's also labeled on the headphones. So it's also labeled on the headphone out. And we have it set up to where if you are sitting in the control seat, you are in seat 1. So if you forget which one you are, which fader that you're adjusting, just look at the microphone that you're using and look at the headphones that you're using, because that will show you that you can, that'll show you which channel to turn. Everything is labeled. If it's 1, then you use the 1. Okay. This right here is the Bluetooth button right here. Remember, if you want to hook a Bluetooth signal up to it, you're going to hold that for 3 seconds. And then when you bring it in, you can just go ahead and bring your level up to where you have a good sound right there. So
just the concept of holding it for 3 seconds, it turns the board into pairing mode, so it can
Yes.
actually pair with your Bluetooth on your phone.
yes, yes. As a matter of fact, I can probably show you that live right now, just so we can see it. Well, we're doing some dangerous stuff here. Let me make sure. So I'm going to push this button here, and then let's see what happens here. Am I plugged in? I wonder if it's off. Let's just see. I'm going to go in here and look at the hardware really quick. Bluetooth. Okay. Well, it looks like it's not showing up when I do this. So there is, oh, there it is. Actually, now it's there. Okay. So would you like to pair a smart or computer? I'm going to click yes. So it's discoverable. I'm going into my phone here. I'm going to go into Bluetooth and then Rodecaster Pro. I'm going to tap it. And now I'm connected. So what I can do now is I can probably play a song. Here, I'll just make it sound super creepy here. I'm gonna, is it on? Can I hear it? Oh, you hear that? Oh, wow. So I want to make sure that that level is right in the right spot. You can tell right here, the Bluetooth one. And then there we go. It's nice when things work, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just bring this down because we're not going to be using that much anymore. And then I can disconnect with my phone and even just turn my Bluetooth off, and then I'm not even connected anymore. So life is good. So let's see what else. And everything else is the same. Now, a couple of buttons I would like to bring your attention to is on the bottom, you'll see one that's under each channel fader. You'll see that there is a green and a red button. If you push the green button, it's going to solo so that you're only going to hear that particular microphone. And if you click the red button here, or tap the red button, what will happen is that you will be muted. So these things on like this, then you know, chances if you're only hearing one microphone, chances are that you've soloed them. If you don't hear your own microphone and your level is high enough, chances are that you have muted yourself. It's pretty easy to figure that one out. All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen, and here we go. So we just reviewed the setup there. Let me make sure this is in the right spot. All right, there we go.
One quick question, one quick fallback on that muting button.
Mm-hmm.
When you are on channel 1, you hear everybody. If you press the red mute button on any other channel, including 1, it will mute the sound from the audio recording, but you'll still be able to hear the people's microphones talking to you on 1.
Oh, that's thank you for filling in that gap. So you might be able to hear it, but you probably won't be able to record it. So you need to make sure that you just make sure that these are both lit up, and normally people don't even mess with them. So and when in doubt, ask a librarian or Martin. Martin's kind of like a librarian. He's kind of like a library too. Now, the next thing I want to tell you about is our sound effects. Now, the board itself is so let me just move. I'm going to go back. I should have just done this right then. I'm going to stop the sharing, and I want to go back to the phone here. These buttons right here. So this one, it has a fader. The buttons have faders, and there are some sounds that you can put in there. If you just press these different buttons, they light up. You know, you can make yourself sound all kinds of craziness here. I just told a joke, everyone. Can you hear it? It's a little low though, right? hysterical. You tap it once, and then you can tap it again to turn it off. So you tap once for it to play, and then you tap it again. And let's see, we have, oh, that one doesn't have, ooh, that one was loud. So these have some sound, these little buttons right here are programmed to have some sounds. So those are some basic ones that you can add to your podcast while things are, while you can tell jokes. Hey, why did the chicken cross the road? Oh, I don't know why. I'm not a farmer. So that you can, these sound effects are there. But did you know that there are also other types of sound effects that you can use? Okay, so let me switch to this particular tab. Hold on, I got it. Can you see what I'm looking at here? Can you see my browser screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. There is something called Freesound. Now, Freesound is a pretty cool page. It's not letting me zoom in. That's okay. Oops, hello. Freesound.org is a great place where you can go ahead and download sounds and search for sounds of even the most craziest sounds. Like I was looking, for instance, of a tuning or guitar tuning. I searched for this one just the other day, and I ended up finding the sound of somebody tuning their guitar. So we could play that, although I don't know if you'll hear it right now because
on the auxiliary. On the
oh yeah,
USB,
this one
if
here.
you bring the USB up.
USB. Here we go. Well, so this is the sound of. Can you hear it?
Little low. You probably the volume's low.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I have it set up right. Anyways, you can just, it doesn't really matter. You can set up these you can search at freesound.org, and then you can download the things that you like. All right. Now, you can use this to just color the sounds that you're making in your podcast. So you name it. If you're looking for something, like maybe you're looking for a, I don't know, race car. Let's see look, a vintage race car passing. So you can get these sounds right here. You can download them, and then you can add it directly to your. I don't have it set up to receive this signal from the computer into Zoom, so that's okay. But just trust that it went boom, boom, boom. All right. So freesound.org is an excellent tool that you can use to get sounds. All right.
The other option you have there, I've put an iPad into the podcast studio. It already has about 400 pre-programmed sounds already in it, just similar to the buttons. That it has an iPad that you can just press all the buttons on, and you can trigger any of the sounds coming in that way. And again, that comes through the auxiliary system.
So he's talking about this particular iPad right here, which you can get all kinds of different sounds. Here's phone ringing. And hey, so you can get sounds just like that, and there's a whole bunch of them. There's like pages and pages of these sounds in here, from anywhere from the phone ringing, like you did, to just sounds of just different strange things. And there's some really hysterical sounds too that I'm not gonna.
Farts, lots of farts.
There are quite a few of those. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my screen here, because that's where we're sharing everything. Okay, we are on sound effects. And so freesound.org, make sure that you go to freesound.org because you'll be happy about that. All right, let's see here. So one thing to keep in mind when you record. Oh, and I never told you that the way you record actually is you have to hit the button that says record. The main detail, Martin, can you believe I missed that? Don't answer that question, because I'm sure it's yes. But there is a button, if you can see that blue button on the screen. You know what? Let me just show you live, because it's more fun that way.
Press it once to record
Yes.
and once to stop.
Yes, when you hit the button here, You're going to press it to record. Right now, because we're using it through Zoom, we're not recording directly into the machine, but that's okay. It would work. What will happen is when you have it will be red, and then when you're recording, and then green when it's ready to go. So right now it's telling you it's blue, and that just means that I don't have a micro SD card in it because we're using the computer.
Also, once you hit the record button, always allow about a second or two just for the system to initialize and start recording. If you immediately start talking and stuff, you may skip a very small percentage right at the beginning.
That is an excellent pro tip. Thank you, Martin. All right, so the big recording button is the one that you want to do when you finally are ready to record. So, but now what happens when you do record that is that it's going to record, and the file that comes on that particular micro SD card will be a WAV file. Okay. Now, when you check out a micro SD card from the Evans Library at the iDesk, it also comes with a regular standard SD card adapter that you can put the micro SD card in it. So you might need to also check out an SD card reader. In other words, we do have ones that will just read the micro SD card. You wouldn't have to use the adapter, but I'm just letting you know that when you check out a micro SD card for the podcast studio, you will have an adapter that comes with it, so that if you have your own SD card reader, it will work. So the thing is that you're going to have to convert it into an MP3 file, all right? So that's something that you'll have to do. And I'm going to show you there's 3 different ways that you can do this. I'm not going to go into the gory details about this, but I'm going to let you know how you can do it. Okay. So the first way is you can use GarageBand. Now, GarageBand is on all of the iMacs that are in the DSL lab. And all you have to do is get the WAV file into the Mac computer, and then open up GarageBand, and then when you're done with it, you can share it as an MP3. It's very, very, very simple to do. It's very, very easy to do this. So let's see, you may say, what are some other ways, Martin? Wouldn't you say that? Oh, here's everyone's favorite free tool, Audacity. Now, Audacity is really easy to use. So I want to kind of focus on this. Audacity, by the way, is a free multi-track audio editor that looks super complicated, but it really isn't. And I've got a short little video that I want to share with you all. As soon as I can stop sharing this, that you can see it's a really short one, really short video. But I'm going to, share my screen. I'm going to share the sound. I'm going to optimize it for a video clip. And I'm going to go here to my Firefox and then share this. And then I'm going to how to export. Hopefully you guys can see this. This is how you're going to export an MP3 out of Audacity, which is a free program. Okay, here we go.
So here on my screen, I have an Audacity project opened up with an audio file in it. And let's say that I want to export this as an MP3. So once you're ready to go, you would just go up to File, Export, Export as MP3. And from here, you're going to see this pop up. And these are a bunch of fields that you can fill out to really make sure that you save it exactly how you want. The first field allows you to choose your file name. And so it will bring in your project file name as the default, but you can name this whatever you want. You can choose where you want it to save. And then here, it should have MP3 files pre-selected from the dropdown. But if it doesn't, you can just click on that and you can see all the options that you have from Audacity. We're going to keep it at MP3. Now, let's dive into all these different format options, and I'll explain which ones are best for podcast episodes. For the bitrate mode, I would leave it as preset. The other options get more into the weeds if you're very particular about the kind of bitrate that you have, but for most audio files, for most podcast episodes, you just want to leave it at the preset. Now, a question that I get often about exporting MP3 files is how high of a quality do I need? Because if you click on this drop-down menu, you have 4 different options. You have insane, extreme, standard, and medium. So all that these do is they increase the amount of bits per second. And so an insane amount, 320 kilobits per second, means you're going to have a larger audio file. Will it be a better quality than the standard audio file? Yes, technically, but not a discernible amount. Unless you've really dialed it in and know exactly what you're listening for, you're not going to notice a difference between insane and standard. And so if you use a podcast host where you're paying by the megabit to upload your audio files, then you definitely want to leave it as standard. But if you use a podcast host like Buzzsprout, where you're paying for the amount of hours that you upload every month instead of the file size, you can use whatever options here that you want to. In fact, if you use Buzzsprout, I would encourage you to export as a WAV, but that's a totally separate video. So we'll stick to MP3. So you can just leave this as standard. It's going to be perfectly fine, and it'll sound great for your podcast. Now, the next drop-down menu is your variable speed. Now, this only matters if you choose the variable bitrate format option. If you use preset, like I'm encouraging you to do, then it doesn't matter what's in this drop-down box. Then the final thing that you can do is adjust the channel mode. And there's three options: joint stereo, stereo, and mono. Joint stereo is the default. That is the most efficient way for Audacity to export your files. And then stereo would be if you have a true stereo where the left and the right are different and you want them to stay different, and you really do care that Audacity exports your podcast episode as a stereo file, click stereo. All right. Don't go joint stereo, click stereo. Your file size is going to be a little bit bigger, but it'll give you actually what you want. But if you're like most podcasters and you don't have a lot of music in your podcast and your microphones are recording in mono anyway, I recommend actually just exporting as a mono file. Your listeners aren't really going to know a difference. It's going to save you space on your computer, and you eliminate all the issues that you get with a dual mono file where the left and the right side are the same and they actually counteract each other to make your audio file softer, which is not what you want. So when in doubt, go ahead and choose mono. But if you really do care, you can export as a stereo file. And when you've chosen everything that you want to select, click save. Now, the next thing Audacity is going to prompt you with is some metadata. So this isn't super important. You don't actually have to fill any of this out, because when you upload your podcast episode to your podcast host, you'll fill out the title, the show notes, any artists, anything like that in your host, and then your host will make that information available to all the podcast directories. So I wouldn't even worry about filling any of these ID3 tags or any of these metadata tags out. Just click OK, and then once you do, Audacity will export your final project as an MP3 file.
And that's about as easy as you can get. So I couldn't have said it better myself. So why?
I mean, one simple thing to understand. Some people say, why WAV file, why an MP3? Typically, file size is the big one. It's a 20:1 compression ratio for MP3. So an MP3 will typically have about 1 minute as a 1 megabyte file size. A WAV file will be 20 times more than that. So purely down to that, if you want to email a podcast that's running an hour, it's going to be much smaller if it's an MP3.
Yeah, and it's very Audacity is very easy to use. If you search for Audacity on the web, you'll be able to find it. It is free. It is a free program, and it's been tried and true for quite a long period of time. If you want to go in and make some edits with that, I highly recommend that you go in and download that and give it a shot. So let's go back.
And also, if you're in the DSL, we do have software that does that, and I can easily show you how to use that.
Oh, this is right. If you go, I'd say the first step would be to just go ahead and use either Audition, or you can use GarageBand, because we have those both available in the DSL. But if you need something for yourself, you want to put it on your own laptop, and you want to do, you're kind of more of the DIY person, I recommend using Audacity. It's a very simple program, and there's tons of support out there for it. Now, if maybe you don't want to do either of those things, clicking the wrong thing. There is another place called auphonic.com, and it will give you a free conversion of 2 hours worth of audio per month. And they let you do it for free. You go in and you make a couple of choices similar to what the person was just explaining, and you'll find that Auphonic will do it automatically for you in a very simple way. and you can get your results right away. You upload your file, it converts it and sends it back. So it makes it downloadable, very easy to use. So that's, being able to convert your WAV file into an MP3 file is actually kind of, it's a simple thing to do. And there's lots of resources out there for it. And if you get stuck on this, you can always send me an email, Jared, Jared at fit.edu, or Martin from the DSL, which I'll show you an easier way to spell it, because this is Gallagher M at fit.edu. But I'll share that in just a moment here. So you're going to say, how do you distribute your podcast worldwide for free? Now, that is a great question. And I'm going to show you this product that's called Red Circle. RedCircle.com. This is a free podcast hosting site that is actually pretty darn slick. And I'm not exactly sure how we're able to get this for free, but it's amazing. Not only is it for free, but if you want to add advertisements to your own personal podcast or whatever, they will find people to advertise on your site and then give you money for it. So it's even better than free if that's what you want to do. Now, you don't have to. It's not a requirement that you have advertisements on your podcast, but I'm just letting you know that someone will give you a little bit. Now, what they do is they take a 30% cut of the ad revenue, but you don't have to do anything. They do all the work. They even find the advertisers for you, which is really great. So Red Circle is really amazing. So I'm gonna show you this right now. I'm gonna show you. You know what? Why don't I just show you what it looks like before I get into all this stuff? Let me just see here. I will switch here. Stop sharing, and share my other screen here. So this is Firefox, and click share. Okay, so now I'm going to go here to Red Circle. Hopefully you can all see that. It's a very slick, thing. It looks like anything that you would almost pay for, honestly. Once you create an account, it's a very simple thing to do. As a matter of fact, Red Circle is so easy that if you're paying for like Libsyn or a Buzzsprout or something like this, which are awesome platforms to host your podcast, but they just cost money, you can also import your podcast. It's a very simple process, though, when you actually go in to make your podcast. And when you'll see we have 3 podcasts here. It shows the one we have. This one, it's Florida Tech, the Fit to Teach. We also have the Shiny Things podcast. That's the one that we had Martin call in, and we just talked about. We don't have an agenda with Shiny Things. We just talk about whatever we want to.
Shoot the breeze.
Yeah, and it usually ends up being pretty hysterical because Martin is funny. And then we also have this new one, the Sentinels of Evans Bibliotheca. That's really fun. That's the one I'm mostly excited about, but I'm actually excited about all of them, to be quite honest. I'm just excited. I'll say that I'm excited about Sentinels of Evans Bibliotheca is because it's a role-playing game and it's the newest one. So anyways, when you're ready to create a new one, it's very simple. You're just going to, after you create your account and verify your account, very simple account creation process. You can just click, when you come back to Red Circle, you'll click this one that says create new podcast. And then, so there's a few things that you need to do, right? But there's going to be a few things that you need to do first. First of all, when I'm talking about putting your podcast into this, onto the host, there's 2 things. You're going to have to create. First thing is you're going to have to create a podcast, and then you're going to have to make episodes for your podcast. Now, in order to create a podcast, you're going to have an image file, 1400 by 1400 pixels. Oh, I hope I wrote that right. I think I wrote 1440 for some reason because I had I'll fix that in just a second. Anyways, it has to be 1400 by 1400 pixels. So you can create this using, Photoshop or some other type of video editor picture editor, photo editor, even possibly on your phone if you want. You have to have a name for your podcast. This is the name for the overall podcast, like the one that we created, the Sentinels of Evans Bibliotheca. You're going to give it a description. You can add a custom link. Now, this would be if you have a web page already that you put this web page together and you want to give people more information. It's completely optional. There's a category here. You have to pick a category, but these categories are things like education, comedy, fiction, health and fitness, a whole bunch of different things that you can pick from. They need to have a way to categorize it because that's sometimes how people search for podcasts. Now, you'll see that there's a secondary categories. This is if you have more than one category, you can add that here, but you might need to just type it out. Now, the contact email should automatically be set up to whatever you started your Red Circle account with, but if you need to change that, you can do that too. And then, of course, your author name. Now, you're going to see down here that there's some more options, and these are mostly, you can consider these like Apple options. So when I click on this thing, you get a subtitle. This is like, you can put in, like for instance, shiny things, and then the subtitle might be things that will blind you because they're funny or something. I don't know. Whatever. You can add that little subtitle here. It's a short version of your description, basically. And then there's the Apple summary. Now, Apple, if this is left blank, you can add. It will automatically bring in your normal description. But if you want something different for Apple, you can have it there. You can select the language that you're speaking in here. That will help people determine what it is that they're listening to. Copyright information right here. And then this is the external link if you have a website for your podcast. So this one up here, I'm sorry, let me go back and correct myself. This custom link, if you have a custom link to share your shows with others, it will show up here once you're all done. Okay, so this is a way that you can share it and distribute it as well. It will. Red Circle is pretty smart. They'll fill that in when you're done. So let me go back to my slide now. Anyways, when you're all done, you're just going to click the red button that says create, and then that just creates your podcast. But you're going to have to also record an episode for your podcast because you got to do it, right? So let me go back and I'm going to share my screen, share my my PowerPoint again. So let's see here, flip it back. All right, so here it is right here. So along with the MP3 of your first episode, I recommend that you do this when you're ready to go. I'm trying to get this thing out of the way. When you're ready to go, make sure that and you'll know you're ready to go because you'll have recorded a podcast. So you'll need a 1400 by 1400 pixel image. You can optionally have a separate one for your episode as well. So you don't need to have the same picture for your episode, but you can if you like. You need to write a name for your show and your episode, write a short description for the show, pick your category, include your contact email, and then you'll need to send a bit more information for Apple if you choose to want to send your podcast there. Very simple.
It is worth noting that I've had a few students who do podcasts from the DSL, and they spent quite a bit of time setting up logos, graphics, colors, descriptions, and they spent some time talking about it and then creating all of that before they started creating things like this in the podcast. So it's worth doing that if you're going to do this multiple podcasts.
I highly recommend that you follow the directions that Martin just gave. Get all of this stuff together, and we have a tool that it's going to help with that, and I'll show you in just a minute about that. Okay. Oh, look, it's the next slide. What do you know, Martin?
There you go.
It's the podcast planning and episode worksheets. So let me see right here. We're going to go right here. I'm going to stop this share, or I'm going to stop that share. And then I'm going to do a new share because I want to show you this page on, wrong one. Stop share and then a new share. I am going to go to this one right here. Okay, so now I need to go ahead and switch to the podcast studio. So this web page right here is the web page that of the DSL. So this page right here, if you go to the lib.fit.edu/DSL in the podcast studio, or just go to, if you're on the library page, you can, if you're on, for instance, if you're just on, wrong one. If you go to the libraries page, this is the one. If you go to the libraries page, you can see there's Digital Scholarship Lab. If you click on the Digital Scholarship Lab and scroll all the way down, you'll see that there is a web page right here. A link that says Podcast Studio. And we're going to click on that. And it shows you right here a little bit of information. And it talks about planning your podcast. Now, when you do it, you can get the podcast planning sheet here. Now, this is a fillable form that you can go ahead and fill in yourself and then save it. Save it to your own device. This is just for you. This is not for us. This is for you to make sure that you have all of the information that will be necessary to put into Red Circle when you're ready to go. You just fill it in right here, save it as something new, and it gives you some checklists right here. For instance, a podcast graphic that you scheduled it with Martin, and then that you're going to be given an RSS feed URL because that's what Apple is going to want when you go ahead and share your feed with Apple. You know, I really ought to talk about that for just a second because I kind of feel like I glossed that part over. When you're going to go saving your podcast to Apple, one of the things, so when you finally have created your podcast, and then when you click on the link for it, you can go ahead over here to distribution, okay? Now, distribution, if you click on the Apple Podcasts, it gives you a little bit of information. Now, in order to get your podcast on Apple, you have to have an Apple ID. Anybody who has an iPhone, iPad, Mac computer, or something like that will already have one, but you may need to actually create it if you don't. So if you want to post your podcast and put it onto Apple, you can go ahead and do that. So if you click on this tab that says distribute to Apple Podcasts, it tells you what you need to do, and it gives you your RSS feed automatically. So this is once you've got an episode, once you've set up your podcast, once you put in an episode, it will give you this feed, and you can give this feed. You just follow the directions here. It is extremely simple. But the one thing that you have to keep in mind is it does take a couple of days. I would say give it about 3 days once you send it, once you distribute it to Apple, following the directions. It takes because they actually have to make sure that it meets a certain standard. And the nice thing about it is the tools that you're using and the information that you're being given right now follows all of those rules. So if you follow the directions I've given you, you're going to be able to be put on Apple Podcasts. Anybody around the world can pull up your podcast as long as it's been distributed there. So let me stop that and go back to my PowerPoint right there. Anyways, there's a podcast episode, a podcast planning sheet, and a podcast episode. This is what I wanted to show you. Sorry, let me go back here. The podcast episode sheet here. So let me go back to the DSL. Let me leave this page. If you go back to this DSL page, the Podcast Studio, you can also find the podcast episode planning sheet. Now, this also has information that you will need in order to bring, once you're finally recorded your episode, this gives you all of the stuff that will help you plan your podcast. You type in your title, your episode number, the description of the episode title, and all of the other information that you will be able to copy and paste later. Now, this also includes guests. Like if you want to have a guest on your podcast, you want to go ahead and add their name here just so that you can remember who all you invited to the podcast studio to record. And then down here, you're going to find that there are some, this is the one I need to edit right here. It's supposed to be 1400 by 1400. I'll edit that and clean that up. And then by the time you get to this podcast episode planning sheet, it should be fixed. All right, so that's just a little typo there. Anyways, right here you have a checklist with Martin Gallagher with his email that guests have been scheduled to meet after you've gotten the date and time scheduled with Martin, that you have this episode graphic, that you've researched a topic. If you're going to talk about something that you need to know about, that you need to make sure you research, this is a little checklist for that. It's optional. If you're going to use an opening music track, if you want to have some sounds or whatever, this is a little checklist for that. And then also you can put in the location of the file. If you're going to include any scripts that you can keep yourself posted by having this, just knowing where the script is, then that you've done it. Closing track music, if you're going to use sound effects, that you have them selected and where you're going to put those. That your audio file has been edited to a single track as an MP3 down here, that it's been exported as an MP3, that the episode has been uploaded to the host, and that the podcast now has been distributed to the appropriate platforms. This sheet right here is just for you. I put this together to make it simple for you to remember all of the different parts that are necessary in order to get your podcast distributed through the various outlets that Red Circle distributes to. So one more thing about that is, if you go to Red Circle and you want to know about distribution, there are several different, here's all of the places that they distribute to. Apple Podcast, remember Apple is a little special. You have to put some extra special stuff. Spotify is right there. If you click on Spotify, it kind of does it magically. Stitcher, I have not used, but you're welcome to try. Amazon Music and YouTube, these will also work. Podcasting and Radio Public these bottom two are automatically set up. So you don't have to do anything for those. So this is an amazing tool that Red Circle is provided for us. So I'm really excited about this.
Can I make one very quick comment on podcasting on public platforms? One of the things you have to remember, when you push out a podcast on all of these different platforms, they may generate advertising revenue, which you will get a percentage of. That then brings you into copyright infringement. If you've got copyrighted material in your podcast, you've got to be aware of. So be aware of the music you play. And certainly with universities, be aware of the project you're working on may have some proprietary information that they don't want to put out. So just be aware of all of that, because the second you start getting 1 cent from it, it changes the rules of the copyright.
Yeah, and this brings into the power of having a librarian, right? If you don't know, ask a librarian, because they are skilled like ninjas when it comes to those kind of topics. So if you're not sure, find out. Make all of your own sounds if you can, or find them in an open source sort of way, and then cite the authors. Okay. Let me go back to my PowerPoint here. Okay, and now that we know about the planning episode worksheets, I wanted to share with you, I was told by Dr. Peterson that there is a Panther Podcasts student group. It's a student-run club on the campus of Florida Tech, associated with the Florida Tech College Radio folks. They don't have a web page, but they do have a Facebook page, and it's easy to join. You just click on the Facebook, or go to Facebook and search for Panther Podcasts, and you can join that. You can also and from there you can email Dr. Ted Peterson, and you can start a conversation about how to become affiliated with this student group. It's an excellent group to be a part of. I find Dr. Peterson to be one of the coolest people on campus, honestly. If you've never had him as a professor, then I highly recommend you take classes with him. He's just an all-around good guy, and he even has given me pizza one time for his First Amendment Speech Week stuff that he does, which is also pretty interesting. If you ever hear about that event, it's pretty great. And that's really all I have to say about podcasts. What do you think, Martin? Are we missing anything?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. The only thing about a podcast is you've got to have fun, enjoy it, and don't take it too seriously. People like listening to things they can get some emotional and fun and interesting content from. So it's not reading a book. It's having a bit of fun and chatting to each other and creating the content that people like to listen to.
This is very, very true. So now, for the review, we know what a podcast is. It's a conversation, basically, or anything that looks like a conversation. And you know where to find them. We talked about Apple and Spotify and all these things. If you go to your Googles or your search bar and type in the name of the podcast you're looking for, that works just perfectly. All right, now you know how to plan your podcast, because I even gave you those 2 sheets that you can get if you go to the library webpage, click on Digital Scholarship Lab, and go to the podcast studio, that you can find the links to those particular PDFs. You know how to reserve you know about the equipment contained in the Evans Library Podcast Studio and how to use it, because we went over that, and we are recording this particular podcast. So if you lose your way, you can always come and talk to a librarian. They'll help you, because they're good at everything. And
Absolutely.
Or you can use Martin Gallagher. Martin, I would like you to go ahead and wave once. there. That's Martin right there, everybody, everybody's favorite guy. So let me replace my place the spotlight. Okay, so you know that in order to reserve the podcast room, you're going to have to email Martin Gallagher at gallagherm@fit.edu. Let him try to schedule a date that works for everybody. And then you know how to convert your recordings from that. You know that you at least need to convert your recordings from WAV files to MP3 files, and that you can use GarageBand, Audacity, or Auphonic.com in order to do that. You know how to use redcircle.com, and also to keep in mind that if you fill out those planning sheets, you will have all of the information that you can just copy and paste into Red Circle, except for you will also have to have your 1400 by 1400 pixel picture that goes with your podcast. So you know that how to use redcircle.com, how to store and distribute your podcast worldwide for free, and you also know about the student group Panther Podcasts. I think I don't think I could talk anymore unless somebody has a question.
I got a couple of quick comments on that. Just
sure. Let me. I'm going to go ahead and spotlight you.
Okay.
And I'm going to stop sharing my screen right here. And go ahead, Martin.
Okay, just a quick one. Obviously, some of my students are trying to develop podcasts as almost a commercial venture, as a long-term venture. So some of the things you need to be aware of when you do that is if you're trying to build a listener base, it's really important that your content is something they want to hear about and something that they're interested in and interested enough to get somebody else to look at it. For every person who listens to your podcast, they need to push that to 2 or 3 other people so you build that base. And the one thing is, it's just like a comedian or whatever, always leave them wanting more. You got to have something that brings them back. What is information? Talk about the next thing you're going to do in your podcast. Talk about the way that it's going to grow and give people a reason to come back and get them interested. Then you will build your base. Don't worry about the money. It's all about numbers. If you get a high enough percentage of people, you get to 1 million people, things like that, the revenue streams will come in very easily because you have the numbers. But just make something that you enjoy, make something that's informative for people or fun, or it takes them out of the normal daily life and they can just sit and most people listen to certain radio programs because it just takes them away from the problems of the real life of the world. So have something that people want to listen to, something people want to engage in, create conversation, anything like that. Give them a reason to come back and give them a reason that they need to tell other people about what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would say, if we only do things for money, then we'll miss out on a whole bunch of goodness that could be out there, So I encourage you to talk about things that will make people's day a little bit brighter. Give them some considerations that the world isn't an awful place. Even though we're going through a pandemic, even though we have to take our classes through Zoom and all these things, and there's a lot of frustration that comes with that, let's breathe deep and actually put out something that will make the world a better place. It's up to you. This is our world, right, Martin?
Yep, that's it. We live in this strange world and we're happy in it.
That's right. You got to be happy no matter what. So on behalf of the Evans Library and the Digital Scholarship Lab on the second floor, I'm Jared Campbell. This is Martin Gallagher.
Thank you.
And this was all about podcasting. We hope you enjoy it. And we're looking forward to you coming in and scheduling time with the podcast studio and see for yourself. Just don't forget your mask. All right, everybody. If you have questions, let's go ahead and ask them now. I realize we're about 5 minutes over. So if you don't have any, I'll understand that. But you can also email those as well. So if anybody has any questions, this is the time.
Was that cricket sound?
I don't know. More like this. We're all out of crickets. All right. So if you do have any questions, feel free to email gallagherm@fit.edu twice. Or you can email me, Jared Campbell, JARED @fit.edu, and make sure that you go to the Evans Library webpage at lib.fit.edu, and you're going to want to click on the thing that says DSL, and then once you're there, you can go down you can learn about the podcast studio. All right. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Thanks for watching. We hope everything went well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.